very timely, your investigation. What are the key takeaways that we can look forward to seeing tomorrow?
Well, first of all, what you're seeing right now with all these embassies closures is definitely related to what we saw and what we didn't see in terms of a reaction in Benghazi, that they want to avoid this happening again. Quick to mention al-Qaeda, quick to say, look, we know the when, but we don't know the where, and so we're going to close things down. So you're seeing that reaction now, the changes. But what
is it an overreaction? Because of what happened before Benghazi and indeed before 9/11? Are they basically saying, we've got to look like we're doing everything we can?
No, I mean, that in a sense, that depends on who you ask. Some people say, yes, it is an overreaction because you're telling al-Qaeda basically, look, you don't actually have to do anything and we're going to close all these embassies down. Plus, what happens once the window of warning is over, right? What do you do? But that being said, I talked to Adam Schiff, Congressman in the House Intelligence Committee today, and he said that the chatter that they feel was exceeded that but before they saw at Benghazi and was similar to what they saw in 9/11.
And also, you can't deny that the level they've got of intelligence here, where they actually have intercepted messages from al-Zawahiri, the head of al-Qaeda, to Nazir al-Wuhayshi in Yemen, order him to do something. I mean, these are the two top players, arguably, in al-Qaeda, directly in contact, planning something big.
And that's what intelligence sources are saying, that this was more specific. This wasn't just a general, we're angry, we're upset, we want people around the world to be motivated to our cause, that this was much more specific. So they feel that it was, and some people have speculated, this could mean that there's some sort of a chemical attack or an unconventional attack, and that's why they had to shut everything down, because it wouldn't be caught by traditional measures, dog sniffing, dogs that can sniff bombs or machines, and they're saying no, that they actually don't think it was chemical, but obviously at this point a lot of it's classified, so we don't know.
Let's get to the Benghazi element of your investigation. You got an interview with Jeff Porter. He was the man that briefed Ambassador Stevens, obviously was killed on that night, on security. Let's watch a clip from that interview.
Why was manpower so lacking in Benghazi?
We're essentially talking about is a CIA mission in Benghazi, whose purpose was to collect information, to collect weapons potentially, and they may have deliberately wanted to keep a low security profile.
So because they didn't understand, they just underestimated the threat.
That's right. But I think one of the problems in Benghazi at the time was that there were so many different violent non-state actors, armed groups, that the U.S. couldn't identify the threat. They couldn't distinguish which was a group threatening the United States' interest and which was simply a violent non-state actor pursuing its own agenda. So there was a real deficit of understanding, a real lack of situational awareness.
I mean, this sort of confirms my sense about the Benghazi thing. It was just general chaos and disinformation and a lack of real understanding of what was going on the ground.
Exactly, and that's leading into it. I mean, of course, on the other end, there was what did they do about it, which is a separate issue, but leading in, this is exactly what happened. They couldn't tell one group from another. I mean, you'll see in the documentary, but earlier in the morning when Chris Stevens was there, he had seen men across the street from the compound taking cell phone pictures. He reported it to local police, but he went ahead with his schedule because you don't know. It could be nothing. It could be something. And as Jeff Porter, who briefed him, said, it was a situation where probably nothing would go wrong, but if it did, it would be catastrophic. And you'll hear General Hayden, former head of the CIA, Wesley Clark, all of them talk about this. General Hayden even goes so far as to say, when he was talking to John King, that he thinks there isn't a single person involved who doesn't have regrets about what they did and why they did it.
Of course, the key thing is what happens next to prevent it happening again. And we are seeing in real time the very extreme action that the American administration is now taking to try and prevent another Benghazi, aren't we?
We absolutely are. And of course, and that goes to using the words al-Qaeda, because, that night, when we'll go through exactly what happens, in the Situation Room, when the president was briefed, when the White House and the Pentagon got that email from the State Department saying, this Islamic group, Ansar al-Sharia, has claimed credit. And yet, of course, as we all know, it took a very long time before that became the formal message out of this administration. So we'll talk about exactly why that happened and why there was that delay and who knew what when, which is a big part of what we worked on.
Where do you see the culpability?
It goes in a few places, and I think there is some culpability on the administration. This was a White House that was aggressively running for re-election on a message of we have defeated al-Qaeda, it's on the run. I was standing on the border of northern Mali last summer. That night, the president was at a fundraiser, and he said al-Qaeda's on the run. And we were standing there and said on our program, it doesn't feel that way where we are right now. So he definitely had a message. But in terms of a concerted cover-up and trying to mislead people, that seems to be taking a little bit too far, but there are some real complaints about how they handled it that seem very fair. But then you have the Republicans who have politicized this when you're talking about people's lives. And, you know,
everyone's politicized it, haven't they, in the end? I mean, on both sides, and that's been the problem. And you have very moving interviews with some of the relatives of those who lost their lives, and that really, I think, brings the human side here away from the politics. It's a very powerful investigation. It's called The Truth About Benghazi. Erin Burnett, as tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern.